buddy. It is Wednesday again. That means you get to hump us. I mean, that means you get to have us help you through the hump day, over the hump. I don't know.
Yay.
um, welcome to the Lanky and OddCrapple podcast. I, of course, am the OddCrapple, the better looking one.
I'm not. So
This is, well, I can't say this is true because somebody would call that bullying, but whatever. And of course, I have to silence my phone. The one thing I forget to do.
oh,
Remember everything else, but not the phone. But there we go. Okay. So we have exactly a week before our 10th episode. This is episode 9. So I mean, I know that 10 episodes seems relatively small, but to know that we've been doing, we've consistently been doing this for so long, even though we've missed several weeks here and there, we've still gotten kind of back into the swing of things and managed to either keep the momentum going or build the momentum back up to be able to still be interested in doing it. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty decent accomplishment, don't you?
oh yeah. And once we get to 100, we'll probably have some sort of pizza party or something.
No, I have acid reflux. That's not going to happen.
Oh, well, just for me then.
Oh, yeah. Selfish. You're the one with siblings. You shouldn't be selfish. See,
True.
I'm an only child. I can be selfish because I was never taught to share. Well, actually I was, but I never was required to share. You grew up with siblings. You should know how to share and be willing to share.
Well, but if my siblings aren't here, then the food's just gonna go to waste, so I gotta eat it.
But by looking at you, you wouldn't know that you have that frame of mind because, I mean, you look like a twig.
Yeah, I think it's like hyperthyroidism or something.
I wish I was that lucky. Yeah, I mean, I'm anxious to see because I think what I want to do as far as the 10th episode and going forward is start using audio platforms as well. Because I think, or starting at the 10th episode, I think I want to start seeing if we can get listeners on Anchor. I know we were using Castbox when we were doing the discussions with the devil, but I want to see if we can get a following in audio form on Anchor, because I know a lot of people are starting to switch over to using that as far as their audio. So I think that would be rather interesting.
Yeah.
And that way, because I think when you search on Anchor, it stays, unless you physically put it on other audio platforms, it specifically stays with Anchor. So at least when people are referencing the audio podcast, you know where a majority of your audience is coming from. As far as the audio audience, try saying that 10 times fast. But yeah, because I think Anchor isn't multi-platform. Like, they don't allow their content to be on other platforms because they don't share, I guess. They don't share. They must not have a sibling.
That should be a theme for our 11th episode.
So today our main topic is going to be, because you figure when you think of pranks, typically you think of April Fool's Day. But I think people forget about the pranks that are played on Halloween. So I want to talk about themed and not or non-themed pranks because I just think that they're hilarious, and I think we're in a time right now where people really need to develop a sense of humor because I
Mm,
think that people are losing the ability to have a sense of humor or losing the willingness to have a sense of humor. And although we didn't really do a lot of in-depth research to this, we watched a couple of videos just to kind of get a few talking points that we could reference. Um, I think that it's just I think more people need to be, pardon me, I think more people need to be exposed to pranks because, I mean, you can tell the difference between a prank and somebody being malicious. Um, because if somebody's being malicious, I mean, they're going to, if it's a prank where you get hurt,
mm.
they're going to, kind of bask in the fact that you got hurt if they're being malicious.
Yeah, because the notion of, or the nature of a prank is that it's lighthearted.
Yeah.
Like you get a little bit of a scare, a little bit of excitement, but there's like no one's getting hurt.
Yeah.
And I think that's the crux of a good prank. Um, any
I wonder how many people listen to us or watch the podcast. I wonder if we can task them with counting how many times, either within an episode or collectively, you have said that's the crux of it.
hmm,
But anyway,
I have to find a
be-
thesaurus.
before we get too deep into the main topic, there is kind of a side topic that I came up with last night that I want to get your opinion on. It's completely different from the main topic, but it was just something kind of that struck my interest. Knowing me as long as you have, you know that I have a very strong interest in the military, and um, seeing how kind of I don't know what the word is like seeing how chaotic the younger generations are like they're so consumed with social media they don't really have
Hmm.
any sort of strict direction they want to go. Like if I think we talked about this in a previous podcast, there was a study done that kids in China, when asked what they wanted to be when they grew up, they wanted to be, astronauts and, explorers and this, that, and the other. They asked American kids and they wanted to be YouTube stars. And I think that speaks to a lot of the decline in what we value here. The reason I bring this up is because I watched a Philip DeFranco video last night where I don't know if you're familiar with BTS. They're a K-pop music group.
Oh, okay.
Um, in South Korea, um, there is a mandatory conscription. And for anybody out there that doesn't know what conscription is, basically it's mandatory time that you have to spend in service to your country in the armed forces. And they have mandatory conscription in South Korea. Personally, we had it here in the States up until I think just after World War II. and then it became the volunteer selective service. And I think this is coming, and I know I'm going to get a lot of shit saying this because it's coming from somebody who cannot enlist, but I do think that we need to bring the draft back and at least mandate that people under the age of 30 need to spend at least 2 years in the military, because I think direction and discipline are a problem in the younger generations. And I don't think I think that because of social media and because of so many things that can quickly get you recognized, I don't think that there's a lot of value in things anymore. I don't think they value things as much. But the reason I bring this up is because I was watching a Philip DeFranco video, and um, the the guys from BTS, the K-pop group, have been talking over the last 2 years, I think, about the fact that they knew that they were getting older and they needed to, um, you know, kind of bow out and serve their time in the military in South Korea, and then they would come back to being entertainers. And I guess there's an effort now, and this shows you the difference between the 1950s to now. Um, there is an effort in South Korea to um, change the law around conscription and make it so that entertainers are exempt. And I believe now here in the U.S., um, entertainers are exempt, because I think the argument that they give here in the States is you don't want somebody who is a farmer from Kansas being in the military, being in the same, platoon or, that sort of thing as a guy who's worth $250 billion. And because it's like, the argument they make is that the guy that is worth $250 billion is more likely to save his own life than somebody who's not worth as much as him. So I think that's the reason that they give that, somebody who's an entertainer or a well-to-do person wouldn't be mandated into the military here in the States. And I think that's the argument that they're trying to make over in South Korea now. But the one argument I have against taking away mandatory conscription is back in, I think it's the early 50s, Elvis Presley actually put his career on hold, went into the military. I think it was for either 2 or 4 years, and served his time, came back out, and got back to his career. I don't necessarily know if he saw combat, but he at least went into the military, served his country, and then came back out. And I think that speaks volumes to how much of a role model he is. And I don't think there are any other notable entertainers in our time that have done that. I could be wrong. I know on the WWE wrestling side of things, I know that Sergeant Slaughter, he actually was in the military before he went into WWE, and then there's a current wrestler named Randy Orton, and to my best of my knowledge, he was a Marine before getting into WWE, and I don't understand why conscription is not mandatory, because I think it's it builds character, because you're not always going to see combat. You could easily be enlisted, be stationed somewhere, and never see combat. So I don't know why people just don't, find a position in the military where they won't see combat, because I think you can do that.
Yeah. Like hypothetically, like during the draft, if you are a conscientious objector, your worst case scenario, if you have to serve, you can still serve in like the medical bay or that sort of thing. So you can actually help heal people as opposed to gunning the enemy down. But yeah, I know the 1940s, 1950s America is a whole lot different than America now.
Yes.
Like we've invested a lot of money in the military. We're a big country. There's a lot of people volunteering to be in the military. I think like our military is bigger than the next 5 countries combined or something like that.
The thing is, I think China and North Korea both have militaries that are bigger than ours. I think, was it China, Russia, and North Korea, I think, are bigger than ours. So if I'm being honest, if we are actually going to end up facing military conflict with China, I really think that they need to reinstate the draft.
I mean, hypothetically, if it's a just war, I don't think you're going to have too many problems finding volunteers. But yeah, I'm trying to find some numbers. But
like I can't see, the Logan Pauls and the Jake Pauls of the world, who are already established entertainers. I can't see them being willing to enlist voluntarily.
Right. I mean, I guess it probably comes down to a matter of character. And I know prior to any field work, you're gonna have to be trained. Like when you go to boot camp, they're gonna teach you how to work as a team, as a as a platoon, and you're going to learn how to support one another.
And
all the while,
that's actually another thing. Military teaches you camaraderie, because if you ask anybody who is former military, they will probably stick up for another fellow soldier before they'll stick up for a random schmo on the street.
Yeah, and I mean, for what it's worth, like my grandfather, I remember, years ago we had to do something, go to some military base and pick up something on his behalf, and he was with us, and he was being saluted like left and right, and it was a really interesting context. As my grandfather, I never really put him in that context. He was always the jovial, I don't know, patriarch of the family, what have you. But I never saw him within that context of, oh, that's right, he's a veteran, he's served in the military, and yeah, he was getting his due respect by his the next generation of his comrades. And
I think that, and I can't really put it in, that generation of soldiers, because I think it happens with anybody who comes out of the military. They try not to talk about it too much, but growing up, I always saw like very, very old pictures of my grandfather um, in military uniform. And, my grandmother would say that he was enlisted, but I don't think until I was in my early 20s that I even knew that he was in the Air Force. He's never been one to really talk about his military service because he served in Korea.
Hmm.
He served during the Korean War. And that, especially like the Korean War, Vietnam, those are the two that I think are synonymous with soldiers from that era not wanting to talk about it at all. It's very difficult to get accurate stories about those two conflicts because the soldiers that are still alive aren't keen to talk about it. Now, when you get World War I and World War II, they'll talk about it.
Mm.
But there was a drastic difference between them and Korea and Vietnam, which I respect that when you see you know conflict like that, it scars you like mentally and emotionally. Um, but it's just I think that it kind of gives you how you and I always talk about, being self-aware and being, you know, willing to, you know, do for yourself before asking others to do for you.
Mm.
I think that if I think the military teaches that because they force you to do things that you may otherwise not want to do. And I think that's why I've always had the mindset that I've had is that, I know I'm capable of, a lot of things. I just have to see what I'm capable of and see at what level I'm capable of doing it. And I think that kind of makes somebody a better person when they realize their abilities instead of relying on other people. And like I said, I think the military and the structure of the military very strongly teaches that.
Yeah, it's both self-empowering as well as uh, a group mentality.
Yeah.
Um, the only drawback I could see is that depending on the drill sergeant or the lieutenant or what have you, they can uh, mitigate independent thought.
Hmm.
That is one scary side effect to, I guess, a broader, military complex. But when it's done right, you have some very social-minded people working together toward a common cause to either make the world safer or to, defend the country or to, save people from genocide, that sort of thing. Um, but then also you have a military that, you know, oil fields. Let's take over this country.
Well, the
Um,
thing is, the military is only taking direction. The military,
yeah, the
like,
function of the government.
yeah, you have to separate the military from the the people in power that are giving them direction. You don't own yourself
Yeah,
when you're in the military. So, there are a lot of people in the military who don't like the tasks that they're being asked to do, but they're doing them because, they're being told that they need to do it. And if, I've always seen the military as being part of something bigger than oneself. And
yeah,
I think that it does more good than it does harm. And I don't know, I just think that if you have the opportunity and the ability to be in the military, I don't see a reason why not to be.
Well, again, you alluded to this before. It depends on the where our government stands. Like for my part, I always thank veterans for serving,
Oh yeah,
but I'm not always thankful to the politicians who put them there.
right.
These
No,
armchair
because
warriors that,
yeah, you can recognize the difference
yeah,
between because it's not the commandos that are making these decisions to go in and just fuck shit up. They're being told that they need to, and I also think it teaches you right from wrong because when you get out of the military, you're not obviously going to go in and fuck shit up because I think it teaches you stronger morals and ethics being in the military.
maybe, but it also depends, like on personal character.
Yeah.
Like you can see, like some soldiers will abuse, you know, uh, their hostages or criminals that they arrest,
Yeah,
while
like
others,
I don't I mean, I think we started seeing that when the second Iraq war started back in 2001 or no, or we didn't go in there until 2003.
yeah,
Um but you saw that, in the likes of the soldiers at Guantanamo Bay. But you also have to consider that I don't think we only had American soldiers there. I think we had soldiers from other countries as well helping us. I don't know for
ah,
sure, so anybody that sees this and knows more about it than I do, they can, feel free to correct me. But I think that we had joint cooperation from other countries at Gitmo, and you know, I don't necessarily know if things that we have been involved in have always had American soldiers doing the wrong thing. I think that the fact that we tend to get mixed in with other militaries during any given conflict, I think that it just ties it all into one.
yeah. Because I know Guantanamo is like a U.S. territory, for lack of a better term.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and
believe it's in Cuba, isn't it? Isn't it?
yeah,
Okay.
and I'm trying to find if there were other military personnel serving there alongside uh, U.S. military personnel. Um, but uh, but yeah, I know psychologically, if power goes to someone's head a little too much,
Yeah.
there can be they can abuse that power very easily.
And
Um,
I think they've gotten better at when a soldier kind of goes in that direction of, being abusive towards um people they have captured in during a conflict. I think that like the higher up military personnel have gotten better at disciplining them. So I don't think it happens as much as the media would like us to think. I think that it's taken care of a lot better nowadays. It still happens, but I think that there's more of a deterrent from doing it nowadays than there was 20 years ago.
I
um,
I would hope so. The fact that we waterboarded throughout, the Iraq conflict, that yeah, I would love it to see the United States actually play the moral high ground and not do torturing anymore.
yeah,
And I think it has been outlawed, but I know during that time,
yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I think that I think you can do questionable things to get the results that you need, but I don't think the questionable things always have to be physically harming,
no,
like physically impactful. Um, I do think that mental and emotional tactics can be taken because I mean you can come back from that, but that's just me. But to kind of skew back to the original question of should we have mandatory conscription? I mean, I know everybody's going to have their opinion, but it's like I don't see how you can argue against somebody coming out being a stronger person. Like you have, like I said, I feel like you have a stronger sense of self. And I think that the fact that you are defending people that you don't know sometimes, I think that actually gives you a stronger, you know, a stronger draw toward, being that protective type, even if you don't know somebody. And I've seen that a lot with, random videos I've seen all over the internet where somebody who is militarily, taught, they'll see a conflict happening in civilian life and they'll automatically, whether they know the person or not, they'll defend them and they'll step in and diffuse the situation because as much as because I think that what the military tries to do is conflict resolution. Like they go in when a conflict is, starting or when they're in the midst of a conflict and they try to diffuse it. Granted, they may have to escalate it before they can diffuse it, but I think that ultimately, I just think that at the end of the day, it teaches um, a better understanding of conflict resolution. And I think that people need that sort of knowledge in the times that we have right now. Because when you see people online, like they'll create conflict just because they are protected by their computer. Like they're a random person sitting behind their computer, just bored out of their mind, having no social life. So they'll sit there and um, they'll create conflict just to kind of get their adrenaline pumping or whatever. It's like I just think that for me personally, I think that the military gives people some sort of direction. So when I saw the story that Phil was talking about, it's like I don't think that there should be a law that entertainers should be exempt because these kids are in BTS are willing to go into the military and they want to serve their country. But I think if it's there and you're given the option, I think a lot of kids will miss out on doing it because I think that there's a lot you can learn about yourself by being enlisted or at least being raised by a military family.
And again, I don't know. I'm always on the fence on everything, it seems, but I always say it depends because our our current veteran, actually, I guess I could just say affairs, um, we don't take care of our veterans very well in this country,
Hmm.
and way too many of them come back with PTSD, depression, anxiety, like severe mental illness, and they're not getting the care they need, and they were promised that when they enlisted, and I think it deters a lot of people from going into the military because they see how badly we treat our veterans when they come back to our country. Um, and I would say that the entire system needs to be revamped. I'm not against uh, maybe like training. Like maybe every American citizen gets some military training, like boot camp or that sort of thing. You don't necessarily have to go into the military, but at least you can handle yourself, and that itself is empowering. I remember, I mean, this doesn't even compare probably, but when I took karate class, back when I was a kid. Um, I've never had to use it, but it's nice to know I can throw a punch or kick enough if worst comes to worst. So there is that empowerment that comes with that sort of training.
And
But
actually, you make a good point as far as a generalized boot camp type of thing, because I've always, I mean, with um what is it? Oh, American Ninja Warrior.
mm,
I think that if you watch episodes of American Ninja Warrior, you don't when you see competitors that have done it since the beginning, you don't see their fellow competitors cheering if they screw up on an obstacle. Like they're cheering
mm,
them on through the entire thing, and they're supportive. I mean, it's amazing how supportive they are. They don't trash talk each other. They are they're a gigantic family, and they support each other, and it's amazing to me. Um, but I think that that's a character building exercise. Like American Ninja Warrior is a character building exercise, and it teaches you what you're capable of and what you're capable of enduring. And I think that it brings the competitors of that event closer together. And when, naturally they wouldn't have been introduced to each other.
yeah, and I can only compare like boot camp. I know the obstacles aren't exactly the same as American Ninja Warrior, but there's like ropes and walls you have to like overcome, and netting and that sort of thing. Like you have to be physically fit if you want to pass boot camp, and uh, knowing that you're able to make that transition from your old self to a new self, that can be very rewarding. At least on a personal level. I don't know if you decide to move on to the military, and serve, have at it. But if you choose not to, then at the very least you accomplished this bit of it.
Mhm.
So not everyone is designed for the military, but it's nice to know everyone is capable of it uh, when they push themselves hard enough.
Yeah.
Um, so for my part, I can't say I'm for like conscription or the draft or anything. I do think we need to keep it volunteer until we need more personnel. Like in the event of like another like, oh wait like
A massive conflict.
yeah like and I would say people know the difference between a just war and you know someone grabbing territory, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
If there's a just cause, I think people will volunteer, whether they be anybody, whether they be farmers or Hollywood actors. Because I found a list. There's it's not extensive, but there are very uh, interesting movie stars who have enlisted.
Yeah. Well, I know that before our time, there was probably quite a few, but I'm saying from, I would say 1975 to now, there probably aren't many uh, yeah, entertainers that have enlisted.
Yeah, I'll admit the list I found, they're mostly older. Let's see, there's uh like B. Arthur,
Yeah, she was a Marine.
Harry Belafonte, Kirk Douglas.
Yeah, like
Um,
that is what I consider the old guard. And you know, I don't, I can't even call the new guard a guard because they don't have that mindset.
No. But I do know for a fact, as far as like, the new generation, Adam Driver and who's the
Yes, he was a Marine as well. It always seems like anybody who's like Marine minded ends up enlisting. Like I think that you have to be of a certain mindset to be in the Marines. Like it takes a very specific character type to be in the Marines.
uh and just Rob Riggle was another one.
Yep.
A little older, but yeah, he's a comedian now.
Yep.
Uh
He actually just did there's a show on with that's hosted by Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Stone Cold just had Rob on like 2 weeks ago, and he was. I mean, I've always known that Rob served, but he actually was in for like 23 years before he started his comedy career. Like that just blows my mind. Like that's a man I would love to be able to call a friend.
yeah, and depending on what you see in the military, it can harden you.
Yeah,
So to see that he has that sense of humor, that's pretty awesome.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's oh god, it's always a precarious situation. Luckily for right now, I know the US is in pretty good shape militarily.
yeah,
I think you are right. China has a larger standing army of more than 2 million personnel, then followed by India, and then the United States. It almost seems
yeah.
like it's a population or a function of population.
Yeah,
Um,
because I mean, the populations of both of them individually are significantly larger than ours. Like
yeah,
China has like over 1 billion people, I think.
yeah. But they only have like 2 million in their at least active military personnel is what
Yeah,
the title
but
of the list.
India, I think, has um several million in their as far as population.
Yeah, and they only have like 1.4 million in their military.
Mhm.
But yeah, China and India are, I think, the most populous nations in the world. Um, the United States is, comes in third as the 1.3 active military 1.3 million
Yeah,
active military personnel,
yeah,
followed by Russia, and then the you know Democratic Republic, no, Democratic People's Republic of Korea is 950,000. Um,
yeah. I don't know if I ever. I mean, granted, it will probably happen in our time. I don't know if I ever want to see us go toe to toe with North Korea. No way.
they're very volatile.
Yeah.
I and actually you alluded to this earlier. If because I know it's normal protocol in the police departments to de-escalate any conflict or situation, that sort of thing. And I want to say the military adopts something similar. Don't quote me,
Yeah.
but I think it's everyone's best interest to de-escalate anything as a first defense. And then if that fails, then you might have to come to blows and punches. But but yeah, I'd like to think we can play that diplomatic card, hopefully for as long as we can, and get some positive effect out of it. But
Well, I mean, as far as diplomacy goes, you and I have talked about that previously, to where to achieve diplomacy, you have to be willing to be open to understanding the other side. That's why I don't think that diplomacy in its raw form will necessarily ever happen. Because if we're trying to say we want to understand the other side, but the other side doesn't want to understand us
mm,
because they are more for the power struggle than they are for peace. Like, diplomacy is never going to be achieved. But it's just, I don't know. It was just something that struck my interest when I was watching the Philip DeFranco show on YouTube last night, because like I said, I've seen stories over the last couple of months where BTS, the members of BTS, have talked about it, and actually other K-pop groups um, have gone into the military and then come back out and then gotten back to their careers. So it's like, you don't have to. You can put your wants and needs on hold to serve a greater purpose, and then once you're done putting your time in, then you can go back to achieving your goals. But I think that having that sort of structure is necessary. That's, like I said, it's a personal opinion, but
I mean, historically speaking, you're not. I don't know. It's not an original idea. I remember, like,
are you telling me I don't have original ideas? How dare you?
but in what I think, like, ancient Greece, it was believed that they wanted the most well-rounded citizenry possible.
Yeah.
So, and I forget the actual lineup, but you started off, with your education, your learning as much about anything and everything. But again, this is the ancient world, so mostly mythology.
Yeah.
But but then you also served 1 or 2 years in the Greek military, and then after that you could serve politically and that sort of thing. So that was their belief, that you would essentially know as much as you could throughout your education, doing everything that was offered in society, military being one of them. So every there we go. Greek citizen knew their history, their art, their as much medicine as they could understand at the time.
Mhm.
Politics, military. It was their idea was to create. Well, okay, at least the Athenians, Athena being the goddess of wisdom, to a higher minded citizenry would lead to a progressive state, more enlightened culture, that sort of thing. And that's what they would strive for. Didn't always work out. Nothing's ever ideal, but
Right.
I mean, the fact that they killed Socrates, I'm like,
Yeah.
a little hypocritical, but
I don't
but
know.
yeah.
Like I said, it was just something that kind of struck my interest. Um, and I know that anybody watching this back is probably going to come at me, because obviously I'm not somebody who can enlist. So they're probably going to say that I'm kind of hypocritical for pushing this idea. But it's like, you know, if I were an up and walking person, I would have made a career out of the military, because it's something that I've been so drawn to since I was young. So it's just, I've always asked friends of mine growing up, like, why, if you're capable, would you not want to be part of something bigger than yourself?
Well, I mean, technically speaking, and again, it always depends on the person.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're all part of one nation, and there are multiple ways to serve your country other than the military. Say,
Yeah.
like, hell, I mean, even throughout high school and college, like, it seemed like every student did like volunteer work somewhere.
We actually had
Um,
we had volunteer work that was mandatory, so it was voluntold. Um, That's what they call it. Actually, that's actually what they call it in the military. When you are voluntold, you get you get volunteered to do things.
Interesting.
But I know that to graduate, we actually had to have, or seniors had to have, so many hours of community service. And although me at 17, 18 years old, I didn't like being told that I had to volunteer because it's like I can't. Luckily they didn't tell you where you had to volunteer, so you could have that as a choice. Um, but it just, I understand coming from the background that I have of always being involved in charity and nonprofit work. I understand the importance of volunteering and kind of helping those who are in need. And
Mm,
I just think that the military would kind of strengthen that um that notion, like strengthen that way of thinking.
y- and honestly, like the whole notion of nation building, like I wish once our military was done in whatever, X nation, when they came home, hey, our country needs help too. Help build us up. I I wish there was an outlet for that, where our veterans could serve their country by literally building up their own nation. Um, and I just think veterans would have such a larger sense of purpose if they could do that. It just seems like
Somebody in the chat, sorry to cut you off. Somebody in the chat just reminded me of something. Um, JROTC um, is something you can do in high school. Um,
yeah, uh,
I completely forgot about that. I actually had friends who were in JROTC.
that's right. And also, yeah, in college, the ROTC. Uh, I remember seeing, its members, yeah, walking around in fatigues. It was so there are outlets, but again, it's voluntary.
Mhm.
So it's nice to know that there's that accessibility.
Yeah,
Um, it's just if there's a public push for it, then I think people will volunteer in droves if there's a just cause
yeah,
for a war.
yeah,
And if we get enough volunteers, then we won't need the draft or conscription.
yeah.
But 'cause I think this country is large enough where you're probably going to get enough volunteers. But if push comes to shove, worst case scenario, if it's another like World War III, um, I as assuming that World War III is caused by a just war, I don't think people would mind a draft. But again, it needs to be justified.
Um, a girl I went to school with, her, and this is probably the last part I'll end on this, because I do want to get to our main topic. There, well, there was a girl I went to school with that I graduated with. Her father was in the army, and once he got out of active duty, he was in the reserves, and he would always be in the school doing recruiting efforts. Like he would have a table in the main hall, and he would be encouraging anybody who was, 17 or 18 or just about to graduate. He would be telling them about joining, the military, primarily the army, because that was his area. But he always knew about um, my uh, interest in the military and interest in the Marines, but it never really deterred him from talking to me about, uh, enlisting. I actually was working with him for quite a few years to see if there was a way for me to be enlisted. or for me to be working for the military. Even though I couldn't go through basic training or any of that, I wanted to at least, be working for the Marines. We never really found a loophole that we could jump through back then. Um, but I'm sure now there are more ways that you could be a civilian working with a branch of the military. And just give me 1 second because the person in the chat just said something. Oh, she's referencing back here. She is referencing back to when we were talking about community service as a means of graduation, and uh, and Mackenzie, I think that's your name. You can tell me like what part of the country you're in. I currently live in Southern Virginia, but I went to school in upstate New York, and that happened to be just one of the things that my school specifically um, required for seniors to graduate. I don't know if it was something that other schools in other districts did. I just know ours wanted you to have community service under your belt. Um, I don't know if there's a difference between, going to school up north and going to school, down here in the south. I would think that based on what I've seen, I think that schools down here in the south are more community community based. Sorry, I heard a noise. Um, I would think that they're more community driven. So I would think that maybe there might be um, a community service requirement for graduation, but I could be wrong. I don't know a great deal about the academic structure down here. But I don't know. Like I said, the only thing I didn't like was that I was told that I had to do community service. Community service should be a choice unless you're a prisoner. But then again, a lot of people did consider school prison.
Mm.
um, but yeah, I don't know. It was just kind of a thought that I wanted to explore with kind of how we can strengthen our future, um, our future generation to kind of help them be a little bit more self-aware.
Well, it often starts with good parenting too. So,
Yeah, and oh my God, complete side note before we go into the whole prank thing. I know that we've, already been on an hour and yeah, we've already been on an hour and we haven't even gotten to the main topic yet. Um, but I was watching the news last night, and there was a mother who had, I guess, used GoFundMe to ask people to help her pay for her daughter's medical bills because her daughter was sick or something like that. Um, it ended up that the mother was then arrested and charged with the little girl's murder, and she pocketed the money.
oh wow,
Yeah, and like that was a story from last night. Um,
it took a much darker turn than I expected.
yeah, yeah, you're like, I didn't see that coming. But yeah, it's like I don't understand people like that. Like I hope I never have people like that in my environment, like in my immediate environment. I
God.
don't, that just, that made me sick. Um,
What's scary is that it started off as like a meme I saw on Facebook, but um, if you wanted to do a cheap costume for Halloween, just go in ordinary clothes and just say you're a psychopath because psychopaths look like everybody else. And I'm like,
you're absolutely right.
that is funny, but also way too true. See,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
have no idea.
if you look at people like, you know, Charles Manson, Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy,
Mm.
they all blended into their community. That's why they were able to get away with, so much for so long.
God.
You just never know. And I don't know, like, I'm sorry to say, and I know people are going to get mad at me for this. There are just some people who should not be parents.
Well, yeah,
I mean, I'm not
if
going to go up to an individual who I think should not be a parent and tell them so. But I mean, in the back of my mind, I know the type of character that should not be a parent. I'm not going to be that person that, blurts that out to somebody, but it's just one of those things. I can pick out the character type and be able to pinpoint and say, yeah, you really shouldn't be a parent.
oy. 'Cause kids need a lot of attention, and a lot of guidance, and their first experience of any uh, role model is their parents.
Yeah,
And if they don't have that attention, that support, um, yeah, growing up is going to be rough. And yeah, it parents need to essentially their life becomes their kids' lives,
yeah,
and if they're not going to support each other, you're going to see it manifested throughout the rest of society,
yeah,
and it's probably going to be negative.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, but again,
Um,
the next front is schools. So if
yeah,
kids get a good support group within the academic structure,
yeah,
that certainly helps.
yeah,
But yeah, that core, uh, whatever style of parenting they're exposed to, can make or break attitudes or characters, that sort
yep,
of thing. So
yep. Okay, now we get to the fun part because I want to, transition into our main topic so that people are, not yelling at us for, lying to them. Um,
dessert,
well, I mean,
little sweeter than the hard stuff.
well, yeah, yeah, this could be the dessert because I mean, it makes you feel good. And well, it makes you feel good sometimes, unless you are the target of a prank. But then again, I mean, if you got a good sense of humor, I mean, you don't mind when somebody pranks you. But um, I think that why is my oh Jesus? Hold on,
I didn't understand that.
my
There.
my Bixby on my phone. I don't understand why that activated on its own.
Hmm.
Um, it shouldn't be doing that. But being that Halloween is coming up, I've been seeing a lot more videos recommended to me on YouTube for Halloween pranks. And I've always been somebody who has I would say, a decent sense of humor. Some would say very twisted. Um, and as long as I would say for me personally, as long as I don't get physically injured, um, I'm okay with anybody playing pranks on me because it's just something that you can, get past as long as you realize that they're just kind of playing a joke on you. I know that you and I did some, basic research on certain videos. Um, Now, I don't know with you specifically, but are there any people that you've been around growing up, or different things that you've seen growing up where there have been really good pranks that you've seen throughout the years, or have pranks been played on you? Have you played pranks on anybody? That kind of stuff.
For the most part, I was the prankster. Um,
And that honestly surprises the hell out of me because you are so quiet and timid. It's like I could never imagine you as a prankster.
Well, that's the thing. I like going under the radar, so no one ever sees it coming,
Yeah.
which works in my benefit. Uh, but one of the times that I was pranked, and they went all out for it, or at least, and actually, it was an April Fool's gag, so not really for Halloween or anything. But let's see, I was in college. Uh, so in the dorm, the doors open into the rooms, as I think they always do. So we had some friends down the hall who put tape and like newspaper or some sort of paper across the frame of the door, and then put a whole bunch of either like balled up newspaper or styrofoam, that sort of thing, on the other side. So when we opened the door, all of it would fall into the room. Um, it was quite the surprise when I woke up and getting ready for class had to, you know, hmm, bit of a cleanup.
Yeah.
So I didn't anticipate that. But yeah, that was the April Fool's joke they played on us, and honestly, I gotta commend them. They executed it very well. I had no idea it was coming. Didn't hear anything. So I'm like, yeah, good on you guys.
Um, I know, like, you hear about, so many, like, with the movies that you and I had growing up. Like, there were these, teenage movies, um, that, people like the American Pie movies. Um, like with especially with Sean William Scott. He was the one that played Stifler in all of the American Pie movies. He is naturally a prankster. And then, you and I grew up with Jackass on MTV. And it's like, so we always had this content that we were exposed to, seeing people have a decent sense of humor so that people could play pranks on them. Um, the one of the pranks that pops out in my head, thankfully it's never been done to me, is when somebody's sleeping. Um, you put their hand in a pot of hot water.
Yeah.
I've never had it done to me, and I don't think I know anybody who's had it done to them, but I've seen it on movies, and it cracks me up. And before you answer, um, Mackenzie in the chat just said that they're a prankster, especially at family events. Let us know what kind of pranks you have done, or if or you have had done to you. I'm interested to know. Um, but yeah, it's just like, I think you and I, with like the entertainment that we saw um, growing up, like people had a more lighthearted approach to, you know, having pranks played on them. And I wonder now if a show like Jackass could survive with everybody getting offended by everything.
Uh, I think there's always going to be an audience for it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're always going to be critics. They're always going to be fans. You find your niche, and I
Yeah.
think that's kind of true for anything and everything, especially with YouTube. There's so much stuff people create, and you're going to get at least some views, and people are
Yeah.
going to like it. Some people are going to hate it. So yeah, I'm almost certain there'd still be an audience for Jackass or the Ali G show. That was another one that was very prankster type. And then there was another one that I forget what it was called, but I think it was British. And it incorporated like actors too, where they'd set up a scene and just play out these very awkward pranks on just bystanders, and it was fun to watch. But then also harkening back to oh god, what is it? with Dom DeLuise.
Oh yeah.
Ah,
There was when you and I were growing up, there was a TV show that was on once a year. Um, it was called TV Bloopers and Practical Jokes. They would have it on once a year, I think towards the end of each year. And I wish they still had it on. Uh, it was fantastic. Now, I mean, you've got shows like, um, well, even though it's not on anymore, Punked that was on MTV. You've got right now, I don't remember what channel it's on at the moment, but there's a show called The Carbonaro Effect. Michael Carbonaro, he's a magician, and he'll go into any random store and he'll play prank like magical pranks on people and just completely blow people's mind. But then you have the other side of it where you have these idiots on TV. And because I don't like the show, I'm going to forget the name of it. It's the crap.
Practical
It's
Jokers.
Impractical Jokers. They are the biggest group of morons I have ever seen in my life. And not to mention, they're the worst people to interact with. One of the guys was actually here in Roanoke, probably a little over a year ago. And my buddy and I were we were out getting burgers and beer downtown. And this schmuck from the show was out and he was completely blasted. Like he I mean, he couldn't hold his liquor. He was belligerent. He actually got kicked out of 2 bars here in Roanoke. And then the second bar, he actually had to be physically removed by cops. And I mean, I didn't like the show before, but seeing that, it made me never even want to entertain the thought of watching it.
Oh shit.
So it's just like, I think that the quality of that type of entertainment that you see has gone down. Like I love the Carbonaro Effect, but Impractical Jokers needs to go away.
I've only seen a few, and for my part, some of them are funny. Some of them are just so awkward. It's only funny to them, whereas everyone else, participating, they don't know what's going on, and they just think it's some sociopath just doing some weird shit. I think one I saw, it was like a buffet, and he was going around taking food off of other people's tray, and then people started getting mad and that sort of thing. So I'm not sure if they choose their audience as wisely as they should, but I do know some of the best practical jokes I've had are either innocent trickery or sleight of hand or like magic tricks, I guess, but also just jump scares. I mean, like a lot of the videos we watched and what I used to do as a kid, you just jump out.
Yeah.
Scare people.
When you and I were prepping for this on Monday, I had told you about when my mom was married and we were helping her then husband's sister move into her new trailer. And it was a completely empty trailer. So I went in and got comfortable and then decided to be a little shithead. And I hid in one of the empty closets. And when they came in with a bunch of heavy stuff in their hands, which I didn't know at the time, they opened the closet and I launched out and scared the bejesus out of them. And I don't think she ever forgave me for that. It was fun though, because I got a good laugh out of it, and I think my mom did too.
And that's what
Um,
matters.
and then my the prank that I will always remember until the day I die is the one, or another one we talked about. I was When I grew up in New York, I lived about 5 minutes from my grandmother's house, and I was pushing my chair home from my grandmother's house, going back to my house, and I happened to have one of the local police officers drive by, and I was talking to him for a little bit, and I don't know why I got the idea in my head to have him go over to my grandmother's house and or knock on the door and tell her that I had just been picked up for suspicion of being intoxicated. And so I don't know why he agreed, but he agreed to do it. And I don't think he will ever agree to do something like that again. Um, he went over to her house, knocked on her door, and he began to tell her that he had just picked me up, and I was down at the local police station because I was weaving in and out of the road, and so they thought that I was intoxicated. And so when I got home, because he got over to my grandparents' house before I could get home, because he was in a motor vehicle, I was in my chair, and um, so when I finally got home, I called my grandmother, and he was still there and explaining things to her. So he must have gone all out to make this believable. He was still there, and I'm like, Grant, because at the time you could disguise your number by doing like *67 or something like that. You could disguise your number. So I made it a private number so that she wouldn't know that I was calling from my house. So she would think that I was calling from the police station. And so I called her and I said, we kind of have a problem. And I explained to her, the same thing he was explaining to her. She lost her mind. Like, she was freaking out. And at this point, um, I could hear the officer that I knew that was over there. I could hear him cracking up. Like, he was dying laughing. So naturally, I started laughing. And she's like, "Why are you guys laughing?" I'm like, "Because it's a prank." I'm at my house. I don't think she forgave me for like a week. And it's like my grandmother and I had such a great relationship that I could do stuff like that to her. And, she wouldn't really take it to heart. But I think that might have been a little bit over the line because it involved law enforcement. Um, so I haven't really always been the type to do harmless pranks. Like, I'll get people riled up. I won't do things that will harm people, but I mean, come on. When you have the opportunity to really expose how gullible somebody is, hopefully you're going to do it. But yeah, and like I'll sit there on YouTube and I'll watch hours and hours of prank videos just because I crack up at the level of dedication that these people go into to get to make these pranks happen. Um, like Roman Atwood, like I don't know if I would have necessarily done this particular one. Roman Atwood decided he was going to prank his then girlfriend. He's now or his wife, um, and hold on. He,
Okay.
yeah, I have the hiccups. Um, he put a dummy on the back of his four wheeler, I guess, and he put a small explosive on the back of the four wheeler, and uh, he stopped the four wheeler, or he made it seem like he stopped the four wheeler. Got off, greeted his girlfriend, and the dummy was on the back of the four wheeler still. So she thought it was her son. that they had, their son that they had together, and all of a sudden you see this four-wheeler just go off on its own. Like it started to move on its own, and it went into a ravine behind their house, and all of a sudden just exploded. She lost her mind. Like I've never seen anybody just collapse like that. And I'm pretty sure that she didn't forgive him for like 6 months.
Who? Yeah. I have to admit, you have to know your audience.
Well, I mean, she had been with him since he started his first channel, so she knew the type of pranks that he played. But I don't think she expected that level of prank on her.
Yeah. Because I have to admit, emotions are very personal. So when you get at the heart of something, yeah, you're going to get an emotional response.
Yeah,
Wow. I have to admit, that was a really good prank, though.
yeah. After we get off stream, I'll send it to you just so you can see it. It was, oh my god, it was one of the best I've seen.
Damn.
Like I said, it's not something I would do, but it's still something I would laugh at. Um, as far as pranks that you've seen on YouTube, what would you say sticks out the most, other than, well, actually, including the ones that we've watched over the last couple days?
Well, since it's, 'tis the season, again, the guy with the little kid, it's, a mannequin with,
Yeah,
fake arms holding up, a candy bag, going around trick-or-treating. He just puts the child mannequin down, rings the doorbell, steps back a few steps, and then they just give the mannequin candy. And then he just picks it up by the legs and goes to the next house. Uh, I think that's brilliant. And
yeah,
especially when people try to talk to it, he's like,
yeah.
he's mute, or he's autistic, or something like that. And they're like, oh, they buy it. So
Um, the video that I had you watch before we were on stream, um, of the little person getting launched into the lake. What did you think of that?
I mean, it was funny. It actually kind of looked fun. Uh, but yeah, that seemed more of like an excitement than a prank, because everyone was in on it. Everyone
Yeah,
knew what to expect. Like it
yeah.
wasn't a surprise to anyone.
It wasn't a prank, but it was just one of those things that, it's fun to laugh at those kind of things. It's fun to see people who aren't in on the gag react, but it's also fun to see everybody have a good time when they know what's going to happen. Even though they know what's going to happen, you still get like genuine reactions, even though they know what to expect.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I'll admit the jump scares with the Chucky costumes.
oh yeah,
That
I
was
was just about to ask about that. Like, if you were to go into some place like Walmart and you were to see a life size, well, I say a life size, but a little person size Chucky doll chasing after you, like what would your first instinct be?
oh god. So here's the thing. Like I don't fight or flee. I kind of just freeze. So I'd probably like be assessing the situation and be like, wait, is that just some kid in a costume or something like that? But I probably like, block or something to mildly defend myself until I see what's gonna happen. But yeah, I I don't think I would react as jarringly as a lot of the people in the video. Um, I'm probably a bit of a, I don't know,
Um,
party pooper.
yeah. What is your opinion? Because Mackenzie in the chat um, just brought up something. What is your opinion of pranks where it's made to look like one or more people are not in on the gag, but they actually are? Like, what is your opinion of like staged pranks like that? Can you tell the difference?
As long as there's at least one person who isn't in on it.
Well, no,
Uh,
this is strictly for like that app called TikTok. You only have like 15 seconds to a minute to plan these pranks. So, it's got to be, succinct. Like everybody's got to be pretty much in on it to make it happen. Um, but it's like, can you tell the difference between a genuine prank and one that's staged, um, entirely to the point where everybody knows what's going to happen?
but is the reaction artificial? Because I think
Well,
that's
I mean, if everybody knows what's going to happen, because it's likely they have tested this out before they made the video of it. So it's like you have to wonder, is their, reaction genuine?
because sometimes when I know what's coming, I'm still scared. Like, oh, that soda just burst open, or oh,
But
that
for the sake of, staged things, like, do you think that that takes away from, people being genuinely impacted by, pranks?
well, I guess, I mean, we as an audience probably wouldn't know what's coming. Maybe I've never seen TikTok, so I'll have to
Well, I
check
mean,
that out after.
it doesn't have to be even on TikTok, but I mean, just staged pranks in general, where everybody's in on the gag. Can you tell the difference?
Uh,
Because I can.
I mean, if they're just acting scared or surprised or whatever, usually it's a little more lackluster than the
Yeah,
real authentic thing. Um, so yeah, uh, I I guess I could tell the difference, but it may not necessarily be enough for me not to enjoy it. Um, like if I enjoy the setup of the prank, the idea, the execution, I'm like, oh, that's a really cool idea. I should try that next time.
yeah,
Then I'm like, maybe I take it more academically
yeah.
than I should.
As far as, I don't know if you ended up watching any of the videos in this regard, but as far as the scary snowman or the Bushman pranks, did you end up watching any of those?
A few. Honestly, those I think that's probably the most simple yet I guess authentic you can get with like jump scares, like
Yeah.
something hidden that no one's going to expect, and then all of a sudden, a jump scare at someone. I think that's
What I love about those is not so much with the Bushman, but the snowman. There are people that recognize the snowman from watching the videos on YouTube. Um, but even when they end up encountering the snowman in real life, like it'll end up in a location where they are, and they'll walk by it and they'll talk to it because they know what it is, but they still get scared out of their mind if it, jumps at them. And that is what I find hysterical, because they know it's coming. And like you said, they know it's coming, but it still jolts them because it's not really something that they're anticipating, because they think they know how it's or what's going to happen, but they don't.
because that moment of scaring happens when they don't expect it. So
One thing that just popped into my head, are there environments which you personally would not recommend playing pranks? Like, if we were at Dragon Con, because of how some people react to pranks very animated, do you think that Dragon Con would not be a wise place to pull pranks, just because the sheer number of people?
honestly, yes. Just because with so many people, a lot of them might enjoy it, but a lot of them might not, and you don't know who's going to react in what way. For my part, I like keeping my pranks essentially among my friends, like a
Yeah,
close
it's
knit
like
group.
it's laser focused on one person. Whereas if you're in an environment like Dragon Con, you're going to have more people reacting that you didn't anticipate. And you're not like if you have it laser focused on somebody, you tend to know how they're going to react.
Mm,
If you're in an environment like Dragon Con, you're not necessarily going to know how they're going to react because
yeah,
you're going to get people that you don't know reacting.
and if someone calls the cops or there's an ambulance, it kind of ruins the prank. So I,
Yeah.
I would say know your audience. That's the
Speaking of
correct.
calling the cops and all that kind of stuff, I don't know why this just popped into my head, but did we ever? Oh wait, no, never mind. I was harkening back to when we were at Dragon Con and fire trucks and cops had to show up because of the fire that broke out. For a split second, I forgot why the fire broke out but it was the Ali and AJ concert. Um,
Yeah, that was
yeah,
interesting.
that still like because they had to pull the girls off the stage because they didn't realize what was happening. Um,
Yeah, we were there. That was
yeah, that was interesting. But
hmm.
um, but yeah, it's like I've seen pranks in like the Walmart parking lot with the Chucky thing. Um, if you're not careful, somebody 3 rows over that's parking their car, hearing people scream, they don't know it's gonna a prank because they don't see what's going on, and they're
Mm,
liable to call the cops.
yeah,
So it's like, do you keep them in a small controlled area or do you branch out and see if you can achieve a bigger reaction? It's like it's kind of a catch 22. I mean, it's one of those things where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't kind of thing
yeah.
because you want to get the bigger reaction, but you don't know what will spawn from the bigger reaction.
You know, 'cause I hate to say it, but control is actually a major factor in any jump scare.
Yeah.
The one instigating the prank has the control, so they really have to judge what is a safe environment, and and again, some people's judgment are off. Other times, it works perfectly.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it comes down to judgment. Um, I I I'm not going to say not do it because if it's just a jump scare, no one's going to get hurt unless it's like a 95-year-old who's going to have a heart attack or something.
Yeah.
Again, know your audience. Uh,
Well,
but
and I mean that even goes back to the Chucky prank when the guys played the Chucky prank on their grandmother.
I have to
It's
admit,
like I wouldn't do that to somebody who was that age.
yeah, because again, you don't know what necessarily to expect. Um, for my part, I would say that's not the best judgment, but since everything ended okay, um,
If you look at the majority of their videos though, like their grandmother is in a lot of them, so she knows what to expect. But even with somebody that old, you don't know how they're going to react, and you don't know how it's going to affect their body.
yeah. So um, I would have been a little hesitant to pull that off. But I like the one in the grocery store. I think that was
Yeah, like I think those kind of pranks need to happen more, just to kind of keep people on their feet. Because I think people get so lost in their own little world in grocery stores and in shopping malls, where I think they need to kind of be kept on their toes, so to speak.
yeah.
Um,
And again, it's all in good fun. Like no one was hurt. And actually, that's another thing. There's no touching. I know in a lot of haunted houses that incorporate jump scares and that sort of thing, none of the actors, none of the monsters can actually touch you.
right, and that
So you,
actually was one of the stipulations in the haunted house when you and I worked at Six Flags.
hmm,
The people that worked in entertainment, or in the entertainment department that worked for the haunted house, they were not allowed to, physically engage with the attendees of the haunted house, which I thought was nice. I know that like if it was another employee that was going through the house, the people in the haunted house would physically engage with them, but if it was somebody that wasn't familiar to them, they wouldn't, which I thought was a good thing. To end though, I want to know your opinion. Do you like more kind of generic and organic pranks, or do you like the more themed ones, or are the themed ones typically the ones where they're more um you know predictable?
Oh, like you mean like someone was dressed up in costume on
Yeah,
near Halloween?
like on April 1st, people expect pranks to happen.
Yeah,
So I mean, in that regard, do you think that themed pranks are less effective because people are expecting it?
yeah. In my mind, yeah, because it just feels forced. Like, ooh, it's Halloween. Ooh, it's April 1st. Gotta do a prank. If it is more organic, kind of off the cuff kind of thing, like you're not expecting it. So, I prefer those.
I have to just to reference something that Mackenzie just said in the chat. Do it to a younger cousin or something, not an old lady. The argument I have there, they're probably both, depending on how young the cousin is, they're probably both going to pee their pants. Just gonna put that out there.
Wouldn't that make it better?
I don't know. Like you get a little kid or an old person or an older person, and you're gonna get the same reaction. They're going to wet themselves. It's just the older person is going to have, fake teeth that will probably fall out of their mouth, whereas the younger person, depending on how young they are, may not have all of their teeth, but they're all going to be real. So
Ah,
it's like you're essentially pranking the same type of person because you're going to get the same type of reaction.
but there might be more cleanup after, depending on the situation.
Yeah, it's just it's like I said, it's kind of you got to know your assess your environment and know your audience.
And then you can have good fun.
Yeah, but all right, I think that is where we should end for the day, and I hope that everybody enjoyed. I know we went long on the subtopic. I didn't realize we would go so long on that, but
I think the
it,
pranks should probably be our subtopic at this point.
yeah, no kidding. Um, but maybe I shouldn't veer, or maybe I should have topics that relate to each other next time. But I don't know. I kind of that one thing about the military just kind of sunk into my head after seeing that video last night. But I do hope that people who watch as a video on demand enjoy what we've talked about. I hope they engage in conversation in the comment section. I'm glad we had somebody here, interacting live that was, adding to the conversation because I think it made it flow,
Mm.
especially, regardless of which topic we were addressing. Um, but yeah, next week will be our 10th episode, and we will be discussing the insanity that is national, how many national days and how many topics are in a national month, because it's just overwhelming and I'm getting the hiccups. But
Good times.
yeah, I know. But I just think that it'll be fun to do some in-depth research between now and then and figure out what kind of topics are designated as, you know, national whatever month, but I also think it would be interesting to see how many things are considered like a national whatever day, because I think that there may be more in a day than there is in a month. I'm interested to know when that whole trend started. So next week's episode may go long, but I think it'll be a fun one just because we can, explore the topics that are, fun, but we can also laugh at the ones that are just completely absurd.
Yeah, it'll be a nice even conversation, I think.
Yeah. So thank you to everybody who, watches, listens, was here. And we will see you all next week at noon on Wednesday.
Awesome.